Take
Cool.
one.
Yeah. So I'll move closer to this. Why don't we get started by you just telling me, like, or telling the viewers,
Okay.
like what you got going on, like who you are, like you like
Uh,
sound, I like sound.
yeah, I can tell you a little bit about my background, and it's kind of like interesting because when I was back in Italy, I mean, I'm originally from Italy, and I was not supposed to be a sound engineer, but my mom is accountant, and I was studying accounting. And then, but I was so keen on sound because as playing guitar, I was like so interesting about how to create different sounds and how to develop a new sound. It was like, let's try to go in a school here and see if they need any sound engineer. And I was talking last week with one of my friend, and he said like, "Yeah, you were really keen on being sound engineer and music producer even from the start." So when I was studying in Italy, something totally different. I started to work as a sound engineer and shadowing a lot of different recording and mixing engineer over there, uh, even without having any knowledge. Just like going there and
What were you studying? Counting.
I was studying accounting, and
Right.
at the same time, I was working during the weekend as a sound engineer in
Hmm.
festival, in live gigs. Now, when they opened up a venue in my town, and they needed a sound engineer, so I was like, "Yeah, I'm probably not ready, but I want to make it." So I
Hmm.
went there, and then I started to work it. And the first gig was like I was like super scared because I know how like a desk work, but it was let's see if I can make it work. Um, and then from there, I was like super into try to make it as a job. And actually, thanks to my ex girlfriend, she's like, I was so passionate about it, and then she said to me, "You need to try to make it."
Hmm.
And when I graduated in accounting and law, I emailed a sound engineer who was working at the Real World Studios back in the days, Marco Migliari, which is actually I need to thanks him because what he said to me is like, "You want to be a sound engineer, a music producer? Yeah, you have to go to UK." So 2 months later, I was UK
Yeah.
doing in Manchester. The name of the school was SSR. Now it's called Spirit Studios. I did an advanced diploma there, and I was still working as sound engineer and recording. So I was doing recording in Italy, and then I went to Switzerland to record an album.
What year were you? Did you come to the UK?
I came in 2018.
Okay.
So to me, it was like I was. I mean, even in Italy, everything is shifted a little bit later on, even like your professional life, because we finished school a little bit later, and then working and studying at the same times. I got everything shifted a little bit late. Um, but I said like, okay, let's do this massive jump in nowhere. And then I came here. I was like, at the start was a little difficult, even because my English wasn't good, and then because everything you need to do is you need to do by yourself.
Hmm.
There's nobody helping you to try to figure out how to do like even like tax return, which is so easy here rather than Italy. But um, and then when I saw there was like a master degree in Birmingham, the Conservatoire, I just applied, and even like I don't know, my approach is always like jumping and try to make something that can be like challenging for me. So and then I carry on doing all of the job that I could find it. And I think nowadays is mainly balancing between recording and live gigs. Um, but this is kind of like my background. I develop how my approach working in live show and in studio, kind of like working in parallel.
And you also do a lot of mixing and mastering as well, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I that's the kind of things that I developed because when I was back in Italy, there was no budget to get a mixing and a master engineer.
Hmm.
So usually, like when you work in like low profile or low budget, um, low budget album is usually who is recording is probably is usually like in charge of mixing and
Yeah.
mastering, and and then obviously working that way, I start to get more job, even like a mixing and mastering engineer. Only like maybe someone else record it, or sometimes you record a mix and you got someone else to master it, which is to me is like kind of the best way to approach.
So you prefer being recording engineer, mixing engineer, and then handing it off.
Yeah, I mean the my if I can choose the best things for me is like recording engineer
Yeah. Y-
because I love the vibe when you are in the studio with musicians where it's not everything is not already sorted and you got the point where the music is almost ready, but that is the time when you need to take the picture of the music.
It's like working as a bit of a producer as well. Then.
Yeah, it's I love the try to interplay you got musician, the interaction that you can get with them, try to give them advice and at the same times make themselves comfort
Hmm.
in the room because that moment the musicians are usually very fragile, and if you can make a sweet spot for them during the recording they will be like super pleased because they don't have any pressure, they just need to be themselves and play the music, and sometimes that sweet spot is when you can get the best performance.
Hmm.
Even like if the tuning the time is not perfect, they are able to share the emotion. If they got someone in the studio complaining or not, they're not chill, the musician won't be chill because obviously the environment they're gonna make the album. It's not.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat more important than like the equipment, what mics you use. If you record to tape or digital, it's
Yeah,
about the
and
source.
100%. And sometimes when I'm in the studio, sometimes is even like having one mic, which is I usually call utility mic, which is plug in and maybe not gonna use it, but if the musician got an idea, it's one mic. It doesn't have to be the best one, but it's ready to go and record something, and then it's there, and you can make it in no time. Then obviously, that idea is way more important than the quality of how you record that idea.
And what's your go-to utility mic?
So, so at the moment is the Neumann M147, but there is a small story behind that mic because uh, 2 3 years ago, I was super keen on the way how Al Schmidt record, and then when he died, they make an auction with all of his gear,
Okay.
and obviously his favorite mic was already sold by with was already sold with like 60 grand. There was some other mics that was quite nice, not as obviously the U67, but there was that one. And I thought like, "Oh, okay, I will try to get it." And I got it.
Hmm.
So I got the one that Al Schmidt used to use it, which is obviously it wasn't on my list of microphone that I want. But then I got it because I don't know, I want to get something that remember him, and and I think it sounds great. It's probably not the go-to for everything, but it's a tube mic, so it give you that kind of vibe that bring the sound a little bit forward because you
Hmm.
got a little more harmonic distortion, and it's always there. Um, got a long cable, I can place it, and then obviously is there. If the sound is not great, you can quickly change it, but at least you can print down the idea. If the
Hmm.
musician got an idea, you can print it down and
Hmm.
say like, okay, this idea got potential. Let's let's get it. Obviously, if I'm using that mic, for example, if I'm recording a double bass, I go on double bass. I probably got another mic, can be a U80, usually a condenser mic.
That segues nicely. So, what's your preferred mic for double bass?
So well, it's really depend how much which mic I can use it. So
Any mic.
any mic,
Yeah.
probably the U87, U47
U47. Fet or Val?
valve
Okay.
on the F, and or or it can be. Yeah, the 47. When I use it in the real world studio, it was like, yeah. And then for the bridge, I usually use two mics, one on the F, and for the bridge, it can be um another tube mic can be like the 147, the M147, the Neumann. But sometimes is a small condenser can work quite well. It's really depend how like the bass player is playing, because
Hmm.
some of them they're quite noisy and they slap a little bit too much. So having a mic that is too bright is it can be it can if you use a small condenser or 184, sometimes I use a Neumann KM 184,
Hmm.
it can be a little bit too bright. I don't know, my approach of microphones or even a plugin is more like they are all are tools, and I need to figure out what I'm recording, and then I usually prepare the mic ready, and then when I'm listening, I got the musician in, I'm and then I change it and I change the idea.
You
It's
ever?
like, sorry to interrupt
That's
you.
right.
It's like having a starting point and then see what I got it and if I'm happy or not.
You ever had much luck with the 4099s for studio work with the double bass?
Yeah, I use it a lot.
Hmm.
I know a huge fan of in studio. I think it's the mic that save your life in live,
Hmm.
100%. But um, to me, it's not a really natural mic, because if you even think of the position, it's not the position where you're gonna listen an instrument. I always, if I can get it, always use it, even if, especially if the room is quite noisy. But always use it. Always keep it in mute.
Mm, it's a good idea. When you track, do you tend to do more like live tracking? If you're doing like double bass, is it with like a quartet or is it like multi-tracking sort of thing?
So on the last project that I'm doing, I we especially when you got double bass, that does mean it mean that you got a lot of musicians playing together.
Yeah.
Which is I always prefer to get all of them play together. However, the drums has a massive impact on the double bass, even because if you got both in the same room, I mean, I tried kind of everything, and obviously I ended having the drums in another room, because the problem to me is that the double bass, it got a massive resonant, which is the drums is gonna be amplified by the double bass.
Hmm.
And happened to me many times where you got the drum set that is louder than the double bass, because the drums has been amplified by the double bass. So being having them in the same room, it can be a nightmare. So, and I thought to get the double bass very far away and then align drums and double bass. But if the double bass is too far away, you try to align and then you got the feeling that the double bass is too late. So then I get them really close,
Mm.
but you got the same problem
What about
before.
baffles?
Um, I don't know. I think the best way is to get the drums in another room, even because I feel if you go, the drums is so tricky to manage, because it's going from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and is might be someone gonna kill me, but it's not like it's a rhythmic instrument. It's not harmonic or melodic. So if you go in the other room and then you can get all of the other instruments in the same room, they can kind of like interact together. Even obviously you can't do any editing or tuning, but i- if they play together, all of the instrument can kind of like interact, because they're all playing the same harmonies and melody, and then they're gonna like adjust themselves. But if you have the drums in the same room, it's gonna cover everything,
Yeah.
and then it's gonna make everything that too roomy, where you want to suppress all of the spill that you got from the other mics. But if you go piano, for example, if you go piano, saxophone, or two saxes and a double bass, all of the instrument they can like talk between them, and then there is where you can kind of like even place a room mic, and then you can really enjoy it.
Mhm.
I always try, even when I was recording the drums with everybody in the same room, and I always try to put room mic. But if you got the drums and other instruments, it's not gonna work. It's
Mhm.
just get too messy because the drums is gonna cover everything, and it will sound roomy, and it just sound fine. I mean, can be fine if you have like a really old style approach.
Well, so Rage Against the Machines recorded their first album. They just did it like a live gig. They just hired out some hall somewhere, and they just mic'd it up like they'd mic up a live show, and they had an audience, and they just tracked the. I don't know if they did vocal overdubs or not, but they just. I think don't think they did. I think he just lead vocal SM58, just tracked it like it was a show.
I feel that personally, my job is doesn't really matter like the quality. I mean, you can get great performance, or you don't need to get the best result audio wise. The most important things to me is the performance.
Yeah.
And if the best way to capture that performance is going to just like two mics, but what the musician trying to say is coming straight to you, that's it.
Hmm.
There are amazing albums that sound really bad, but the quality of the performance is amazing. So to me, is especially when you record, mix and master, is just doing the packages and the, and deliver what the musician trying to say. But what you got inside is way more important than
For sure.
how you deliver the
Hmm.
package.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you don't have anything inside the box, the package
Really nice.
have to be yeah.
Yeah. I've seen like some people that can't play, can't sing, record songs with 10 grand mics through like a SSL desk with like 1176, LA2A, all this processing. It's like hundreds of grand's worth of equipment in the room. It's like that shouldn't even be getting recorded in the first place. Like go back to the drawing board, make the music good, and then worry about like which mics you're going to be using.
Yeah, I think that there always, to me, there always something in between. I feel uh, great gear allow you to reach the quality sound that you're trying to get way faster. I feel it's like it's driving a car. I'm not a huge fan of car, but I think it's good. If I need to go from here to London, and I got an Aston Martin, I can make it in I don't know 1 hour,
Sure.
obviously without getting any ticket. But if I'm driving, I don't know, a Panda, Fiat Panda,
Mm.
I can reach that point,
Yeah.
but I will take it maybe 3 hours, and then maybe need to stop a couple of times.
Hmm.
So um, to me is okay. I need to try to reach that level. You can do everything with stock plugins. Obviously you need to spend way more time to tweak it and way more time to adjust everything to reach what you're trying to get. And might be like a plugin, an emulation on SSL, or using the console, you can reach that point in 5 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So that is my feeling. Or even is really depend of the production. Is always a tool. If you got 200 channels and then you need to add a piano on a track full of drums, bass, guitars, everything, it might be just having two mics, small mics inside the piano will be fine, because the song is already too full that the only thing that you need to come from the piano is like a little bit of brightness, a little bit of. But if you go a piano duo, so
Hmm.
piano and voice, the piano need to cover all of the
Yeah.
full range. So there is where you probably need a really good quality mic, because everything is so exposed. Or if you got just a guitar and voice, that's probably where I'm more tempted to get a great mic. Sometimes even like a 58 or a SM7B, they are great because you might be like everything is too full, and then you got the voice a little bit more small, and it's cut to the mix a little bit better
Hmm.
because when you got great mic, you got the voice is going from 20 to 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and it's too much. I mean, we got that range, and we need to stay there. And if you want to put there 50 instruments, you need to make some compromise.
For sure. So, best or favorite piano mics, either live or studio, your pick.
Well, um,
Let's say it's voice and piano.
so if it's voice and piano, not classical piano, because classical piano is can be a little bit different. Um,
We can talk about that one after.
uh, I usually set up two, three pair of um, stereo mics and always try to check which one is the best. And now,
So,
I
what might those three pairs be?
so it's usually Air 88 AEA mic.
Okay.
It's a ribbon mic, stereo
Yeah.
ribbon mic.
Yep.
Um,
The R88.
the R88 exactly. Um, that is the first one, but sometimes can be a little bit too warm and muddy. It's really even depend the piano. I feel like piano is probably the instrument that changed too much. The sound is changed too much between one or the other piano, so it can be really different on each
And
piano.
where are you putting that? Because it's a Blumline mic,
Yeah,
isn't it? Where are you putting that?
like a meter. Sorry, I'm from Italy, so I'm not working on feet.
I don't
Ma-
use feet either.
kind of like a meter far away from the piano,
Okay.
not too far away because it's quite you need to turn up the gain quite a lot, and then I feel like the bloom line, I love it because you can stay quite close and it's still quite natural. I feel when you start to move a little bit too far away, if the room is not perfect, is start to get really roomy, and you feel like the face is turning around to you. That's the first one, and then I usually go Decca AB, which is a stereo, so it's two Omni mic, 50 centimeters one to the others, and I usually use the Sharp's M uh, MK2, which is
Okay.
a
Yeah.
Omni capsule,
Yeah.
and then I got I used to have KM 184 Neumann KM 184 as a ORTF, but then that kind of like I think it's disappeared a couple of months ago, and then I using two U87 as a AB,
Sure.
quite wide, and I always check the phase because it can be a little bit phasey. If I'm doing more
Are
like
those hard panned?
hard pan, if I'm doing pop, is usually the U87, two U87 left and right, and one in the center as a mono,
What, another U87?
another U87 as a mono. And when I don't have the third one, I use the my utility mic, the M147. But
Okay.
always checking the phase because, especially in the piano, is the phase can be too wide, which is I'm not checking to reach +1, but at least trying to around plus 0.5 as a phase, because the piano obviously is so big where everything can be fully in phase, so you can switch a little bit.
Hmm. And what about for live?
For live is oh
4099's on the inside.
yeah, yes, or we got the luxury here to get the 4021, which is basically the it's still like a kind of pencil mic, not a spot mic, but the capsule is a little bit bigger, uh, which is you can put inside the piano
Mhm.
and you can even like close the piano.
Okay.
which is something that is very useful when you go on a really loud stage and you need to lift the piano quite a lot. It sound is not the best, but it's the kind of thing that allow you to get as loud as you want, and then you can tweak a little bit with the console, which is kind of two different approach to me. When I'm in the studio, I'm tend to not use any EQ unless it's necessary. In live, EQ is like just save your life.
Yeah, well, I guess in studio you've got the luxury of changing the mic, changing placement, getting it
Exactly.
right how you like EQing with the mic itself before
Exactly.
you have to pull up a plugin.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to Housemate, where I kind of like I start to use that approach because he start to work where there was no EQ. So he started to work where the EQ wasn't invented. So his EQ was move the mic or change the mic. It's kind of paradox because in back in the days they got no EQ and a lot of different mics, so you can change the type of mic. Nowadays it's exactly the opposite because with plugins we got tons of plugins, ton of EQ, but we don't have so many mics, so it's kind of like swap around. But I feel I got the luxury to change to have different mic where I can change it and thinking rather than having a sound that I don't like it, rather than EQ it first, I'm gonna change the mic or move the mic first because in this way I can not get any compromise on the phase. The sound will be way more natural because I feel every time you add an EQ, you always add a little bit of phase issue, um, which is always kind of like compromise, which is fine because it's really depend what you're trying to reach. But if you got a great recording, that will be way easier. Even like working with proximity effect, if you want to get something way a little bit more warm, you can get closer or like or move a little bit away. Obviously, it's really depend where you're recording because if you're recording a voice in a room that is not treated, you obviously you want to stay really close to the mic to avoid any room. But if you go luxury to get a room which is well treated, if you stay even 30, 40 centimeters, you can still reach what the sound that you want without having too much boominess from the voice.
So brings me on nicely to favorite vocal mic.
I mean, I can't really tell you because I didn't test all of them. It is a kind of fight between I can tell you what I'm using at the moment, and I can tell you what I would like to use.
Sure.
So it's probably what I'm using now is it was the Warm Audio 47,
Okay.
but I recently swapped with the Neumann M147. My feeling is I love the Warm Audio um, microphones, but the high end is a little bit artificial. I don't know if that's make any sense. So when you start to compress, and if you're doing on any pop production at the moment, you start to compress, you need to boost the voice quite loud because you need to reach quite loud mix. The high end is start to get unmanageable, it's get lost, and the S can be very very bright. Um, the Neumann, which is the low end from the 47, the warm audio is way more pleased and more gentle. The Neumann is way more controlled, but when you start to compress and then you bring up, the high end is still smooth and you can manage way better. So I used to use that one, and now I got this one. Obviously, my dream is having a 147, but I don't have that money.
Mm.
Probably that one or the oh my god, I forgot the name. Um, ELE no Telefunken the 251,
Okay. Like tube one.
the tube one, the 251. Yeah, is it 251? I
We
think
can look if you want.
I think it's ELA 251.
251
I think it's 251. Yeah,
ELA
yeah,
M
ELA.
251.
That is,
What we
I've
need
never used
we
it.
need to have like this linked up so I can just type
Yeah,
it in and we can look
you
at it
can
now.
look at.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of great recording session that I really, you can feel that it. I always tend to get tube mic on the voice because to me the tube mic is move the sound a little bit forward.
Hmm.
As I said, with harmonic distortion. But for example, the harmonic distortion that you got from the warm audio, it get too heavy on the high end when you start to compress it. I mean, I love their mics, but for the voice, it's get a little bit too much. In the other scenario, on the double bass, because the low end is a little bit more, please, sometimes it's work really well on the double bass. Um, but nowadays, I'm using the 91147. I wish I can get the 251, but
Mm.
they're quite expensive. And
What's 12 grand?
yeah, it's 12 grand.
You can
I
splash with
used
that, can't you?
I think I used the Flea 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 mics, the replica of the 47
Okay.
when I was in Wales. That is really great mic, but it's still like around 3 grand.
Mm.
So
One of the best vocals that I've ever recorded was with a what's it called? Brawner,
yeah,
Valvet X. Brawner. This mic. This was
yeah,
just sounded incredible, like really clean. Um, that's about what was it, a grand and a half.
yeah. The
That was like such a good vocal. I had this going into a clone of a 1073,
Okay,
and then going into a 1176, catching the
compressor.
peaks, yeah,
Okay,
and then going into an LA2A.
as a yeah. Okay,
And that was like such a great the LA2A wasn't doing much. The 1176 was just catching the peaks,
uh,
and then the LA2A was like smoothing it, and it was like almost like perfectly mixed in the rest of the track. Didn't have to do. I spent a bit of time setting it all up on the way in, and then when it was done,
it's
into the
done.
computer, and it's basically there.
Yeah, I think the browner is the um I think it's called the MV1.
What by Brawner?
Yeah. Uh,
MV1?
I'm
Yeah,
not 100% sure it's that one.
this
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
that one.
never used it.
So that one is, I think, is their top mic. Story about Al Schmidt when he did the Fisma Broner did the Fisma. Al Schmidt was in I think in German recording some a big band orchestra.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where Broner is based, but he drove down to give that mic to Al Schmidt. So like, please tell me what you think. And Ali didn't send it back. Just
Oh,
keep it. Just keep it. So like, yeah, this. Yeah, I never used the Broner. I know there are amazing mics.
they're
I
really
never
nice. Yeah,
use it.
we've got the Valva X, and then we've got the Fantera,
Ah, yeah,
and the Brawner's is like the Valvet is like one of my favorite vocal mics.
yeah. They're really well made, and yeah, I never have the chance to try it. But I always heard like amazing thing. Even I would work with a producer when I was back in Italy, and he said like, "Oh mate, he used the BT1. Forgot already forgot the name,
The
and he's
VM one.
VM1.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that mic was like just straight in, amazing
So we've done double bass, piano, vocal.
vocal,
Let's do snare drum then.
snare drum. I think it's the Biodynamic 201.
Yeah, favorite of mine as well.
Yeah, when I'm doing jazz, I'm always tend to get that one and tape next to the 184. There is a really cool thing that I used to do it, and now I found an easy way to do it. On the snare bottom, I usually put the 414,
Hmm.
um, but obviously this is kind of thing that I steal from another engineer. Um, because the snare is quite big in front of the drummer. So I used to put two 414, one on the left side and one on the right side, basically both aligned to the snare, and then pan left and right.
Okay.
to get the width of the snare.
Snare bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, but then obviously when especially when you're tracking not just the drums, but you're tracking drums, double bass, piano, vocal, and two saxophone together, you're running out of channels quite soon. And obviously the drums is important, but probably the lead vocal is a little bit more important.
No, snare. Snare's most
Uh,
important. So you have that on like a stereo bar underneath?
I used to have a stereo bar underneath. Now what I'm doing, uh, maybe because I'm lazy, I got just one mic, and I use the stereo width as a
Plug in, yeah.
plugin
Okay.
to spread it. And I tested, and sometimes the sound is a little bit different. Sometimes it's kind of the same. So I say like, okay, if I got a spare channel, I'm gonna put two mics. If I don't have spare channels, I'm gonna get one and use the stereo width.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, you've got 201 and KM184. Do you put the KM184 on the side away from the hi hat, or doesn't it matter to you?
Sorry, which
So
one?
you said you put you tape the KM184
Yeah,
to the. So if
Wayne
you've got
Knight
it like
for
here,
yeah.
you put. Does it
The
matter to you which
no,
way?
no, I put the K184 far away from the hi hat.
Sure, like that extra inch away. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I did a masterclass with Steve Albini.
Hmm.
It was so interesting. I maybe shouldn't say it, but it was so interesting his approach about recording drums and what he think about a good drummer. So he said that for him, the distance that the drummers got from the snare to the hi hat, it make like a good drummer.
Okay.
Obviously, it was just like probably a joke, but he's like, if I'm seeing that the snare and the hi hat they are quite distant, probably will be a good drummer, will be
Hmm.
a really good drummer. So if they're really close, it might be a good drummer, but I don't know. But if they're far away, 100% is a good drummer.
Yeah, I know he hates bands with three toms.
Yeah.
He said two is the perfect amount. So this is apparently Steve Albini's favorite snare mic, the Altec M30 175. It's tube pencil condenser, and I've obviously never managed to get my hands on one, but he I saw in like some YouTube videos said that this was his favorite. So you ever see one of these?
No, I've never seen one of these, and I don't think he even like brought it
Okay.
when I did the masterclass. I remember he brought his mic for the kick, which is the Dynamic 360.
Is that the he puts it right in the middle? It's figure of eight, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a figure eight. They put in the middle, so it's basically got just like the the the
Ladder
two,
and resonant.
yeah,
Yeah.
but no, basically
The shell, yeah.
the
Yeah.
shell of the kick.
Yeah, I've never tried that.
Yeah, I've never tried it. I remember, but I think on his approach of recording is rather than the mic that he's using is more related about working on tape. I remember I wasn't there during the masterclass but I know that he spent a lot of time calibrating the tape because I think he used the tape as a saturator to kind of like get the first compression in, which is like a massive gap in digital world because obviously tape adds sound and start to compress the sound when you get in, especially when you push the input a little bit hotter than you're supposed to do it. So probably is that the kind of thing that make his like sound so unique. Um, but it was really interesting to see his approach to miking. Even he got a really nice approach of high overheads, in not putting overheads on top or on the cymbals, but just put behind the drummer. Um, he used two calls um,
4038s.
for 38, which was sounds amazing, and I think he boosted like the high end. That mic are
Yeah, you can get away with boosting quite a lot in the Coles and the
yeah,
Roys as well. Because they have that because they're ribbons, they have that like natural
yeah.
roll off. You can just bring that back up and it's like very natural sounding.
Yeah, yeah, because they don't have any resonant and in the capsule, so it's just like you can
So it
boost
isn't a
it.
capsule. It's
Yeah,
a ribbon. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
So the difference between condenser and ribbon is like you don't have a capsule, so the the ribbon doesn't go in resonant by itself.
Mhm. Yeah. So That was snare. So M201 next to a K184, and then
Yeah.
two 414s. Cardioid
Um, yeah.
with a bass roll off.
No.
Okay.
I usually cut it after, which is actually I'm supposed to start to do it on the mic. Yeah, they usually wide cardioid.
Okay.
Um, I used to, but it's the kind of thing that I tried and then I probably was lazy and then I didn't do enough research to make sure that it's gonna work. I used to put like 1 4 1 4 between kick and snare
Yeah.
in figure eight
Yeah.
to figure eight like positive to the snare and negative to the kick.
I've done that with an RM 700, like a T-Bone
Yeah,
Toman own brand ribbon. Had it right halfway between, so you get the beater side of the kick
yeah.
and the snare bottom, and then it's one mic, and you've got like two sources from it.
Yeah, that was the idea, but I feel like every I tried 3, 4 times, and then I think I spent more time to find the right position and try to understand how to use it. Whereas, like, if I spend more than 10 minutes to place a mic and spend more than 10 minutes to figure out how to balance in the mix, it's probably not the right
Yeah.
mic technique.
Uh-huh.
So I got rid of that technique and then, like, okay, underneath two mics got these stereo widths that allow me to get the snare wider,
Mhm.
and then I'm happy. I'm always try to be like quite minimal. For me, the drums is I'm not tending to EQ too much, or I'm EQing the bass of the drums, and might be spending more time to align all of the microphone that I got.
Mm. And how you just timelining? You just
Yeah,
shifting in time like the overheads or the room mics
Yeah,
or
I'm not time aligning to the room mics because room mics to me have to be room mics, so have to be
yeah.
quite far away. Actually, I add delay to them.
Okay.
So if the room is not too big, I'm gonna add probably 50 milliseconds to that the room
Just like
mic
push
to
them back a little bit.
yeah exactly so I can get a little more separation.
Hmm.
That obviously is always a starting point, but what I usually do is I got my overheads mic, and then I align everything to them. I always try to align when I'm recording, so align the snare to the two overheads as a main to get the same distance, and then align all of them to the mic.
Mm.
Uh, there are a couple of plugins that allow you to do it.
Yeah, there's the Little Labs IB1 or IBP or something,
Yeah,
the phase thing.
and then there is another one that a friend of mine suggests me to try, but I don't know. I because you can make even like a group of delay. So even for example, if you record an orchestra and you got the string section, you can align all of them and make a group of strings, and
Mm.
then you can get woodwind, and then you can get that one as line as a woodwind. I tried, and I tried for the drums, and then I tried to align manually, and it sounds better to me manually. And every time I'm doing these kind of things, I got a couple of friends that I'm sending the take saying, please tell me which one is the best for you.
Hmm.
And if all of them saying this one, I'm staying over there. I don't know. Sometimes, even when you're very busy, you are working, and I always try to get a spot where I can do a little bit of research and discover something new. But when I'm working, I'm staying on something that is really consolidated for me. And then, like, okay, I know that this kind of thing is working. I'm doing this recording. I know that this starting point is always great. I'm starting from there and maybe start to add some experiment, maybe just one mic. Because if you do more than one mic in a recording, then you start to get lost and you don't know exactly what you aim to.
I'm pretty sure I've heard Steve Albini say that every single session he always does like
Yeah,
one
exactly.
expert like
Just
yeah,
one.
just try out like this new thing, see if it
Yeah,
works.
exactly. But no more than one, because if you start to do too many experiment, that it's become like a scientific session rather
Okay.
than
Capturing the music,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
It's good though when you're at university that you can get a band or your drummer mate or, you know, whatever, and then just like fuck around with like hundreds of mics and try out everything, try out weird positions. And it's not about capturing the music. It's about experimenting with the tools and building up that knowledge of how like a ribbon sounds different to a condenser and like how it's going to change in the room and things like that. So you can like experiment with hundreds of mics, learn, and then when you come to do a proper session, when like a band comes in, they want to do a demo or whatever, and you want a bit of a time crunch, then you can be, oh yeah, I tried that thing. I'll do it like this, and have like some informed choices.
Yeah, I think it's so important, especially now where we got so many tools and so many microphones that there are a lot of like cheap mic that they might be sounds great or they might be sounds great for something. So having the chance to say, okay, I'm gonna friend of mine is coming with a guitar. Let's get 30, 30 different mics and then you might be that just like spot out that that mic's a little bit too bright. But then next time you go a session, it's like, okay, this guitar is so muddy. Let's get a really bright mic to just
Mm.
to get a balance. Is why sometimes when I'm maybe not mixing or there's a time where I'm not mixing too many session, I say like I'm kind of like losing my muscle memory. So I just download some track to mix really quickly, and then I need to mix in 2 hours just to keep my brain fresh. That okay, I might be like losing, or there's something that I want to try. If there is something that I want to try mixing wise, I'm not doing it on a project that I've been paid to
Hmm.
mix, but I'm gonna download the file, do my experiment, and that is not the mix for the client. That is a mix for me to understand if I'm doing something or that plugin or that tool can help me to, or it's just like a placebo effect, which is
Yeah.
90% of the time is.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing that when you start to develop your sound, more you mix, more you develop your idea, and then when you want to change it, sometimes if you do on something that you're working on is might be gonna change it too much.
Hmm.
So usually the client come to you for the sound that you already did it,
Yeah.
not the sound that you're gonna make it.
Yeah. So you mentioned guitar there. Should we?
Shall we go
Should we?
into the guitar mode?
Yeah. Like you can do guitar cab. You can do acoustic, or you can do like distorted guitar. Like, what's your
um
whatever you want to?
I don't know. My approach is quite like following the musicians.
Not
Um,
just 57 center of the cone,
no, I mean
cutting the mesh.
I'm not a huge fan of the 57. I always tend to use a condenser and a ribbon mic together. I always try to get, if I can get, two cabinets left and right, uh, because as a the picture for me, and obviously it depend how big is the production. If you just get one guitar and then 60 other instruments, that obviously that guitar can be mic.
Let's do like a three-piece rock then.
So in three piece with can be drums, bass, and guitar, and maybe voice.
Yeah.
That guitar and you obviously a big part of the sound. And I always tend to get at least two microphones. So it's usually two microphone, but ideally two microphone, two different cabinets.
Okay.
And if you get lucky, you can get two different amps, two different
Okay.
cabinets, and two different
Two
microphones.
different guitars.
No, that actually you can, but the idea to me is get the sound a little bit spread left and right.
You have those in the same room when you record them?
Uh, yeah, ideally, yeah, it can be the same room, or can be even the same even the same amp
Yeah, with the different
with
speakers.
two different cone, and then one on one cone and one on the other.
Sure.
The idea is because if you listen an electric guitar, it's not just a point in front of you. It's the cabinet is quite big.
Mhm.
Just to recreate that kind of vibe, it need to be wide. So I'm maybe not hardly pan left and right, but get the two microphone that allow me to balance left and right. And I'm not staying really close to the cone. I used to be. And then when I did the session with Steve Albini, I was really impressed that he was keeping the mic like 40, 50 centimeters from far from the cone. And it was so interesting that the sounds get way more in focus. And then even the dynamics when you got the low end and the high end, usually when you are too close to the cone, when you go to the low end, it's so boomy. When you go to the high end, it's so harsh. So if you move a little bit away from the cone, everything, because obviously it's physics, the balance is become more in the center rather than top and rather than smiley face. So in that way, allow me to stay a little bit away and then get more in focus. But sometimes it really depend who is playing guitar, because that is gonna work if you go really loud and distort guitar. But if we move to the jazz guitarist, for example, one of the things that I usually do for the jazz guitarist is putting a pencil mic next to the player,
Mm.
where even like if it's a electric guitar or a semi-acoustic guitar, the attack that you got from the guitarist when he's playing is you can't get it from the amp. So miking the amp in this way, and then get a third mic that is picking up the sound of the strings, that kind of attack is so is way more natural than what you get from the amp,
Mm.
because the especially in jazz, they gonna listen all of the sound. So when they playing, they also like listen the guitar quite close to the guitar. I hope this makes sense. So you need to try to capture their pictures and then repropose to
Yeah.
them. So it might be not gonna work, but it's the kind of thing that is always good to get it as a spare.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Just the other day, I saw someone doing acoustic guitar, and they recorded it with their mics, and then they did a overdub of palm mute, just like muted the strings, just the strumming pattern over the top, just to have an extra attack
Uh,
on top of the
yeah,
acoustic guitar.
that kind of thing is work. Or even the other thing is, I think is very useful, that 90% of the time you don't use it, is like getting the DI when you record the
Mm,
electric guitar, mainly for editing.
yeah,
Because if you got a super distorted sound, you can't really see where
the attacks now.
the
Yeah,
attack
yeah,
started. But if you got the DI down there, it's so fast to do
yeah,
that. Only for the editing.
yeah. Yeah. Or if you just want to whack it through like an amp sim, change the sound
Yeah, yeah,
totally.
you can do it.
You
Or if,
after you record the other instruments, you know what? I want something different. And now you've got the DI, you can work with it.
yeah, but to me, it was the key was the editing,
Mhm.
because doing a lot of and then no, we need to change this chord. You can even see, and because if you when you're doing some editing, especially when the session is really short and you need to make everything really quick,
Mhm.
if you try to do the editing no time, the musician will be always pleased.
Yeah. And DI before pedalboard, I assume,
Um,
or after pedalboard.
ideally both, but
Okay.
it's really depend how they run the pedal board. Sometimes they can be so easy, so you can go straight after the pedal board. Sometimes they can be too complicated because they got sender button, because they want to get the delay pre-amplification, but post amplification, post pre-amplification, but
Yeah.
before the last
Yeah. Yeah.
amplification.
Yeah.
So sometimes can be a little bit too crazy. And then obviously it's really depend how the sound of the guitarist is already, how solid is the sound. If the guitarist want that sound and is so committed to get that sound, I'm gonna keep it after the pedal board.
Mhm.
Or even like the choice of delay, this kind of thing is sometimes is what you're gonna do after in the studio. But sometimes it can be when the guitarist know exactly what he want, you can keep it as it is. I feel like you need to be always flexible. There is no right or
Sure.
wrong way to deal. It's just I feel sometimes, especially nowadays, where when we work in the digital world, where you can decide everything at the end. But when you start to postpone every decision, you're not gonna make all decision at the end. It would be opening the door at the end, and then you got like 10,000 decisions to make at the last
Yeah.
step.
Yeah. Well, that brings us on to those like virtual microphones. Virtual mic. You can't even decide like which microphone to use. You use the blank mic, and then later on you can like swap out the mics and things like that. So there's the Slate, Stephen Slate one. There's the UAD one. There's Antelope, I think, D one.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing now, isn't it? How do you feel about
I mean, I
that?
use the Universal Audio,
Yeah.
and I really love it. I just like a mic.
Okay.
It's super flat mic, really nice mic, even if you don't use any emulation. Because there is another plugin that is working with supposed to work with every mics, which is made by Acoustic Audio. It's called Lava, which is allow you to swap between whatever mic you want.
Do you need to tell it what mic you recorded it with?
You need to tell which mic are you using.
So it's got like profiles of like
Yeah,
all the mics.
say like I got 58 and I want to get into 88.
87.
Yeah, U 47, U 87, whatever you want. And I think that one is quite cool
Hmm.
for when you go live recording,
Okay.
because you can like adjust a little bit the sound of a SM58, which is not sounding great. You move to like a 10 gram mic.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's like adjusting and help you to mix, and it's got better sound. Sometimes obviously it's really depend if even the stage is too loud, but uh UAD I think is great. Still thinking that I should buy at some point, but as you said, is like is making postponing the decision,
Hmm.
which is probably the best way to do it. Is get into the room, get the singer sing to the mic, choose the emulation,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
then print it.
Yeah.
So, for example, now when I'm recording voice, I uh, because I got the luxury to when I'm recording, maybe sometimes running with the SSL, I always get record the lead vocal with the U 1176 and with the LA2A, and print all of them together, and then I can decide later.
Okay.
But 90% of the time, I use the 1176 already printed,
You
because
never cascade those 1176 into LA2A?
I used to do it, but now I'm just keeping the 1176 and the LA2A. But probably because I'm doing more soul or jazz music,
Okay.
so the dynamic is still like
Hmm.
part of the song.
Yeah.
If I need to do something way more compressed, I probably use both, or even use a distressor if I
Okay.
can get a distressor.
Yeah. So just to quickly go back to guitar, you said ribbon and condenser. You want to throw out some models on that?
Um, I mean, if I can get the ribbon, the Royal 121
Classic guitar mic.
classic guitar mic, that why I use it last time. I think the coast is a little bit too dark, but obviously, as I said, like they're all tools. You need to adjust about what you find the sound, and then adjust it. Um, the TLM 103, I think is a great mic
Okay.
for guitar. I'm not a huge fan of that mic.
I don't like it on vocal.
No, I don't like on vocal, but he got that kind of a artificial high end that I think is work quite well for guitar. It's not working for voice. I'm always hate it.
I find it harsh on
Yeah, it's
voice,
very harsh on it's very harsh on vocal.
especially female vocal.
Mm, but on guitar, I feel like give that kind of brightness, but because electric guitar is already quite punchy and full in that range. So it's kind of like helping to smooth a little bit.
Hmm.
But that one, or what I used it last time, the 87 could be nice. Um, even the 414. I have to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of the new 414.
Okay.
I I think it's a great mic, but it's missing a little bit of soul. That's my feeling. The
Okay.
old one they were great. The new one is missing a little bit of soul. They're great for everything, but they don't add any character, which is sometimes is
What you want?
great,
Yeah.
what you want. But sometimes I feel I prefer to make a choice on like it's no artistic choice because I'm not doing anything artistic, but make something that start to move the sound in what I want at the end rather than get something really flat and then make a decision later.
Yeah. I think we've basically gone through mics for different things, unless there's anything that you do particularly different that you want to like talk about, like any like approach to like a specific instrument that you have that you think is unique to you,
Um,
like kick, hi hat, toms,
no, I'm not miking the hi hat 90% of the time. I mean, I do it, but
and then just not use it.
I'm not
Okay.
use it.
Yeah.
I'm doing because happened to me one times where the drummer was too loud on the cymbals and not on the hi hat. So I'm doing it and I'm not using.
Mm.
Um, no, I think my approach is more like trying to get the room and try to read the room when I got all the musician together because 90% of the session I'm doing now is with a lot of musicians together. So I got kind of my standard way to mics. The drums I usually use the Air 88 as a bloom line, which is
Is
probably
that right over the top of the drummer?
can be different, but usually like on top of the drummer, yeah, or can be in the front of the drummer.
Okay.
It's really depend. If the drummers is very well balanced, in front of the drummer is amazing. If it's not well balanced, probably on above his head is great. Um, but rather than that, I think it's more like try to make sure that all of the musicians are very comfortable in the room and they can see each other and they don't need to change anything. And if they want to record anything, they just like got the mic there. That is the most important thing on recording. I'm thinking if I'm doing something quite crazy, but I'm not probably not so brave.
Mhm. Have you ever mic'd ride, had a ride mic?
Uh,
Because if you're doing jazz, you've got a lot of like articulation. Have you ever like a C451 or KM184 just for ride?
um, as a overhead, I usually set up the bloom line and
Mm,
then the two condenser mic
mm,
to capture the overall drums. And I usually that is a mic that I use for the ride.
mhm.
Uh, which is I'm marking from behind the drummers as and pointing as a more or less is A B, so it's not they're not too close, but it's pointing to the symbols
Mhm,
has like approach as Massenburg.
mhm.
So uh, and that they're usually omni mic.
Okay.
So
You get a lot of room.
uh, I mean it's really depend of the room. If the room is quite dry, then they because I got quite close, then it's not too roomy,
Okay.
but I prefer the high end from the Omni mic rather than cardioid because the cardioid got a little bit of boost, not all of them, but they got a little bit of boost on the high end, which is like make the cymbals a little bit too harsh.
So for the Omnis, you're using the Sherps.
Yeah, MK2 are my go-to.
Hmm.
I would like to try. Um, I forgot I think it's the Audio Technica 4050, but I'm not 100% sure. I need to check. That is the mic that I would like to try as a overhead.
Okay.
But
Try
I think it's the Audio Technica 4050. Let's check quickly.
4050. Is that
Yeah,
one of those?
no.
Was it a pencil condenser?
No, as a condenser is not pencil. It's 4060 maybe. It's ages that I'm not checking that mic. No.
I saw something really interesting that I haven't ever tried, but I would love to try it. Is tracking the shells and the cymbals separately,
Ah,
where
yeah, I think
you do like air hits. I know, uh,
AC/DC did it.
yeah, and Dave Grohl did it for Queen of the Stone Age.
Okay.
So they do all the toms, and I think I've seen people do it differently. I think when Dave Grohl did it, he had electronic pads. But I've also seen people do air hits, and I've seen like pillows who just hit pillows. So you do like the shells, and then you just do like an overdub of the cymbals, and then you get like 100% separation, and you can balance the cymbal. You can crank the top end in your snare without any hi hat bleed. You can crush everything, and then you just lay the cymbals on natural and
That's
that's
the
like,
dream.
yeah,
That is the dream.
yeah.
For us, is the dream because you can get full control of everything. Yeah,
Hmm.
the problem is like you need to find a drummer that allow you to do it,
Yeah, yeah.
um, which is quite interesting because sometimes you got um, drummers that they're really well balanced. And the thing that I sometimes I find quite difficult when you got a drummer that is very specialized in one genre can be jazz, for example, and they are amazing to play drums on jazz, and they're trying to play pop music.
Hmm.
90, not 90%, but 80% of the time, it's not a disaster, but kind of disaster because they think that jazz is pop is like the evolution of jazz, but it's actually that the balance of the drums is way different. So in jazz, they are super heavy on the cymbals and on the ride on the hi hat, and the pop is exactly the opposite. They're very loud on kick and snare,
Hmm.
but on the hi hat they're very gentle. So when you go a jazz player on drums for a pop album, you can feel that the hi hat they smash the hi hat and so loud, and the snare is just like super shy in the back,
Hmm.
which is not happen every time, but it's the kind of thing where if someone is so specialized in something, doesn't mean that it's great on everything. So, and when you're producing this kind of album, it's get quite tricky because you need to talk to them. You need to be very kind, and but at the same time, you need to get the recording done.
Hmm.
So that trick can be very useful if you got just
Yeah.
drummer.
One thing I like to do is after you've tracked all the drums, just go through and do like single hits
Ah, yeah,
of everything, and so that you have like a little sample. So if you need to like
absolutely.
spice something out, or if you need to like enhance the snare, and you do like gate the snare and then like layer in like trigger the actual sample of that same snare, and you just layer that same snare like sample replaced with itself. That can
And
be
then
really.
you got full, yeah, you got the full
Mm,
sound without having any bleed from the hi-hat,
yeah.
or that's something that I usually do when I'm tracking, and the session, I feel like the session is not under great. When I got great musician and the vibe is great, it's just like, okay, let's keep the vibe as it
Mhm.
was in the recording session.
Yeah, one thing I haven't done, but I've been thinking about it, is like overdubbing, just like doing a snare overdub,
Mm.
but swapping out different snares. So you get them to
Ah,
play, and then like let's say you've got a really bright snare, get like a really dead, dampened, like low tune snare, and just get them to like play along, and then you can just blend that in, how it, like bring up the body of the snare a bit.
I think that is probably something that is probably from this drummer, and when you record, changing the snare is so important, that can make a song, especially if you're doing like pop music, can make a great song, or I mean the song that is driving or not,
Hmm.
because the sound of the snare is like what is leading. uh Indeed, when I was in Italy recording an album, the drummer brought in like four different snares,
Hmm.
and we tried all of them, and then we decide which one was the best.
Hmm.
Because
And it,
it's not 90% of the time, if that snare is great, but you don't know if you want a more like funky style, or really like low snare where it's just like need to sit, be there,
mhm.
and
um, so desert island mic, one mic you can only use for the rest of your life. What are you picking?
I thought about that question the other day. Anyone
Any mic
uh,
of your choosing, but you have to use it for everything
for
for the
everything.
rest of your life. In studio, we can ignore live.
Okay.
And for
Use
live, you can have like a pack of like 10 57s, but
okay.
for studio, you can only have one.
One U67.
Hmm, okay.
Yeah, probably U67. It's not. I use it one and I just like fall in love. Um, because I feel like the U47 can be too much sometimes.
Hmm.
The I think U67 can sit everywhere quite well.
Yeah. We've got, I think they're supposed to be clones. The Mojave MA 200s, like a valve mic, but
Okay,
I'm pretty sure they're clones of the 67s. We've got a pair of them, really nice on overheads. If they're not smashing the hell out the cymbals and it's like a softer thing,
okay,
a
they're
pair a
amazing.
pair of those on overheads could be quite nice. Yeah. So I've done favorite mic. You do obviously do a lot of live stuff as well.
Yeah.
Or this can apply to studio, but like best slash worst gig. So like something terrible happened in the studio, something terrible happened live, or one of your crowning moments, like something you really think you've done well.
Um. So I don't know. Let's. I like to put myself in a like challenge mode sometimes, and probably the one that was really difficult to me and it went really well, uh, or to me went really well for the time that we got it. It was um, this year. This is the third year that I'm doing it, but is this year they give me they didn't have me they come on brain. I didn't have enough time to set up. It was
For a studio session.
live session.
Okay.
I think studio is can be a little more chill to me because usually in a place where usually like everything is set up to record.
Hmm.
But live, that was in the Mumford Hall in Leicester. We got um, there was 50 mics, 12 monitors. Um,
50 mics.
there was 50 mic because we got an orchestra on stage,
Okay.
and then everybody was mic individually.
Mm.
So there was four, four sorry, two first violin, two second violin, two viola, two cello, a bass, a piano, two flute, two clarinet, two oboe, two bassoon, one sax, two trumpet, two trombone, two tubas, drums, piano, bass, two guitars, percussions, three singers, and two presenters.
what what mics are you using for all of those?
Um,
DPAs, clip-ons.
so strings on clip,
Okay.
flute and oboe on clip, 1499,
Hmm.
and then 57 for the rest of the woodwind section, clip for the trumpet and trombone. French horn was 58, tuba was 50, beta 57, drums was kick was opus 99.
Mm.
It was my first mic
Yeah.
so it's still working. I think it's fine for me. I know how to treat it. It's the
Mhm.
kind of thing is knowing the tools is better than having the best
Mhm.
tool.
We can talk about kick drum a little bit as well if you want,
Okay.
because
I don't have a big approach of kick. Is to me is I feel really difficult to mix the kick by itself. I need to have the context of the music, and then I can mix it.
let's go back to this 50 orchestra thing.
And then what I got, we did so kick that one snare 201 on sorry 20 yeah 201 on top, Sennheiser clip mic on bottom, Sennheiser I think is 604 601
Clip-on, Tom
yeah
clip-on. Yeah,
on
604s.
604 on on rack tom and floor tom. Guitar was DI because it got an amp simulator, which is great because I don't have any spin on stage. Piano was 40 dpa 4021 with the piano close, so I was able to boost the piano. um and then what we got, percussion 2 km 184 as a overhead, and 257 for the timpanis.
Mm,
um what else? Microphones, vocal mic. No, I use fun. The Sennheiser wireless one, the one that I found on the venue. I forgot the
okay.
name. I'm always very picky, to be honest, on wireless mic. I Unless it's the auction technology, the accent technology from sure. I use always find the high end really artificial, which is fine, obviously, but uh, I always suggest to the musician, to the singers, to get a wired one rather than a wireless. But
Mhm.
um, I think that's it. We didn't have
So
anybody
this
else.
is worst gig or best gig that you've done?
I think it was the worst scenario,
Okay.
which went great
Okay.
because
And how long did you have to set up 50 mics?
so we got l- um, in the room at 7 a.m. Sound check at 9:30. Open the venue. Uh, Doors are 10:15. So for me, the big challenge was setting up everything because it was 50 mics, 12 monitors, and then personal monitor for the rhythmic section. And obviously, if something go wrong, it can destroy
Mm-hmm.
everything. And for me,
At least they didn't all have in ears.
we got three in ears. The
Okay.
singers running three in
Okay.
ears. Yeah.
Yeah, but a whole orchestra all in ears.
They're actually something I'm planning for next year,
Okay.
but the problem is you need the kind of thing that for me was so tricky that day was timing, because we started the sound check at 9:30 and we got the door at 10:15, so it's like 45 minutes for
That's insane.
sound check. Now, for example, I got the desk that we got in front of house. I set up everything at home,
Hmm.
and then finger crossed, get there.
What
And
desk were you on?
that was a CL5, Yamaha CL5. So, for example, I used that desk last year, the year before, and then I got the scene from last year. So when I went to the venue, I emailed them, say like, "Can I use the CL5?" And it's like, "No, we got another desk." It's like, can I use that desk? Even I know that the new desk was better, but I couldn't race to get into a new desk and get the scene ready, and it's not gonna work.
Hmm.
So they were really kind and they allowed me to use the desk from the previous year. But that is like if something went wrong.
Well, nothing went wrong by the sounds of things.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I
It's a
mean, we
miracle.
have to. We had some issue on the patching, but we fixed it in 15 minutes. But
Yeah, that does sound like an absolute nightmare. 45-minute sound check for 50 microphones.
I was lucky that I got the scene from the
Yeah.
year before.
So I guess this is kind of like a follow-on from like your worst gig, like biggest mistake you've made. Studio, like didn't record something, overdub something,
Over
or
the
something in live, howling feedback. There must be what at least one
yeah,
mistake
that
you've
probably
made.
even more than one. Uh, I'm thinking, trying to get the worst one I did it. I mean, I remember the first recording session that I did in my life.
Hmm.
That obviously was a absolute disaster because I was never used any Mac before,
Okay.
and I was running Logic, and I wasn't leading the session. It was a friend of mine leading a session, really nice guitarist. Um, he was leading the session, and he's like, "Ah, I need to go away for 30 minutes, so carry on recorder." And then I don't know how I did. I mean, now I know how I did it, but I create um, a circle in
Feedback loop.
in no, like a loop on
Oh, okay.
Logic,
Yeah.
and then if you press, I think Alt C, it's basically become that loop is become like skipping that part.
Okay. Okay.
So he want to record that part, and I don't know how I did it as a like skipping the part. So
Mm,
every time we were trying to record, we would reach
mm.
that point and we were skipping, and me try to understand what is going on, but with no clue.
Uh-huh.
That, but probably is not the worst one. The other thing that I did it was like, but I wasn't even like started to do any engineer. I was just like curious. A friend of mine was in charge. I'm talking like 15, 18 years ago. A friend of mine was in charge to the lighting for a gig,
Mhm.
and uh, he was there, and he just need to turn up and down the master. And I went there to say hi, and there was the blackout. The blackout on top on the master fader. I was basically, I think, blackout and reset.
Okay.
So I went out. Ah, that's cool. Let me try it. So I tweak it and I pressed blackout and reset,
Mhm.
and everything went dark, and nobody was able to restart it. So I ran away, and that was my first things happen in like the show world.
Yeah.
And then I feel so guilty that like, oh, I need to be a sound engineer because I did something
Yeah.
really bad
They
in my
messed up the
life.
lights. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So.
Sorry, the guy who organized that gig, he doesn't know that I did it.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, maybe if like this
I
podcast
don't think
becomes.
so. He doesn't speak English,
Oh,
so I
okay.
think it
Fine.
should be
Oh, no, I'm
fine.
gonna overdub all of these in
Okay, cool.
every language.
But I know, actually, funny story. His son came to me to take some lesson because he wanted to be a sound engineer.
Doing something right then. Uh. So, what do you think in your world of live studio mixing are some of the most important skills to have?
Um, Reading the room,
Okay.
to me, is kind of reading the room because um, people, especially in live, where obviously the technical skill have to be there, that need to be there, but when you got the skills and then you can learn it whenever you want, people want to be with you in that room because he feel safe, he feel comfortable to be with you. Uh, a friend of mine that he did a lot of tours in the world, he said like, when you're doing a tour or you're in the studio, you want to be with the great musician, but you don't want to have the best. You want to get someone that you want to do 200 miles together
Hmm.
because you want to have laugh. You want to, obviously, like the skills is the basic part now, especially nowadays. You need to get at least a good knowledge of skills. But then what makes you a great musician, a great engineer is how to read the room, try to understand if a musician is start to get tired, and it's like, mate, you need a break.
Hmm.
And they probably will say like, no, no, let's carry on. And it's like, no, you try to get a break because you're getting too obsessed on one thing. And I feel like this is one of the most important things. Um, and then don't think too much about be paid. I mean, obviously you need to be paid and have to be uh, really respectful about what you did it. But at the same time, if someone start to ask you something to do, probably try to do it and then say like, oh, okay, I did it, this is how much it cost. But if you start to complain about, ah, he's not gonna pay me or this kind of things, it's probably, I don't know, it's the kind of vibe that to the client you're gonna feel like you don't want to do the job, which is probably it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
But you always need to show that you're always keen to do to get the best result. Even like if you think that what you're recording is not so great, but you're recording not for you, you're recording from them. So if they're happy, you need to carry on. There are always these argument about if the client asks you if there is something that you need to do but you don't want to do it. Talking about my hero, Ashmit used to say, their name is gonna appear in the front. If you're lucky,
Okay.
your name will be in the back.
Hmm.
If you're lucky, so it's their product. So do it what they want, and then obviously someone's gonna come to complain to you.
Well, it's like Death Magnetic, is it by Metallica? They wanted
Ah, yeah,
the loudest album ever. I think
yeah,
didn't Andrew Sheps mix that? He's like, yeah, I mixed it, and then they wanted to fuck it up in mastering. That's on them. Like
yeah, yeah, exactly.
someone else's problem.
Yeah, yeah. He said like, yeah, yeah. I wasn't the only person in the room. So
Hmm.
it's like everybody said like, ah, yeah, Andrew Ships makes it, so it's his fault. But
Yeah.
uh, can be anybody. Or it happened to me that I did a video and then they turned down the volume when I sent to the video maker. It's happened.
Hmm.
It sounds a little bit quieter than I master it. It's fine.
Hmm. Um, so back to like tools and stuff.
Mm.
Do you have any favorite like gadgets or little tools, little like tricks that you implement either in studio or live, or any like things that you think are like underrated or things that are like massively overrated?
In live, I think dB meter can be very useful, and RTA meter in the room is very
Okay.
useful, especially when you be there for a long time and you got fatigue. Seeing something that showing you what actually happened in the room is quite useful.
Hmm.
Um, Probably the best thing advice I can give for studio or mixing is taking breaks every 30 minutes. When I'm mixing, I need to stop and take some break and take some change the room because I get used to the acoustic of the room. So I need to change the room
Okay.
and then get a little more relaxed and then back in. Because when you're mixing, you might be spend too much time and then you start to focus on something and then you lose the overall pictures. And then when you go back, you start to think that everything else that you already did it is wrong. So probably that's the time to take a break.
And in terms of like physical things or even like digital, you got any like secret Swiss Army knife plugins that you?
Um, I mean, I'm a huge fan of acoustic audio
Mm.
plugins, which is probably they're my favorite, but they're super heavy. And probably the thing is, I always tend to do a lot of things on the mix bus
Okay.
because it got less impact on the face because everything is already condensed over there.
Is that as you're mixing it, as you're doing the balance and things, you're
I
already putting
usually
things
like
on?
do the balance first and then start to get engage my mix bus
Okay.
plugins
Yeah.
and see.
What have you got in your mix bus?
I got clinical EQ on as
Is
the
that the
first.
Kirchhoff one?
Um, is actually now is Green 5 by Acoustic Audio, which is the emulation of the Massenburg EQ. Super,
Is that the 8200?
yeah,
I think it's that
yeah,
one.
that one is like an EQ that you think it's not doing
This thing.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not doing anything if you're boosting or cutting, but that usually is just for cutting if there is any resonance coming from the overall mix. And then I got uh, three different compressor, all of them calibrated as the same. And I'm not gonna use all of them, but they are already there, and I'm gonna check all of them one next to each other and see which is the sound best to me. Obviously, it's a kind of feeling, so you got it, and then you can check it. I like it, I don't like it, and usually a Shadow Hill,
It's like the UAD one.
yeah, the Plug-in Alliance,
Oh, okay. Yeah, the plug-in one.
yeah. Um, that one, but with the optical compression off on the master bus.
Okay.
Um, and then I got um, that one, L Ray, which is an emulation by Acoustic Audio, which is an emulation of the RCA 6A. It's a tube compressor, really old. Love it. Um, and then the one that I'm using every time at the moment, which is Erin, which is an emulation of the EAR um 820 compressor. And then after it, I got E EAR 80 50 80 20 80 25 EQ, which is so interesting because is an EQ that nowadays recently all of the companies start to make a new an emulation. So Plugin Alliance released last week. Actually, it's not Plugin Alliance, it's Lindell
Oh, the
released
Lindor,
last week. 2 weeks ago, no, a month ago, IQ Multimedia released an emulation. 1 years ago, I think 1 years ago, or even before, Acoustic Audio released Erin, which is the emulation of the compressor and the EQ.
So you're going clean, transparent EQ. Then you've got choice of three different like colorful compressors,
Yeah,
like valve type
yeah,
compressors, and then another like more colorful EQ after that.
yeah, and then can be that one um the curve bender EQ.
Mm.
Um,
Chandler limiter thing.
yeah, exactly. It's usually that they both got the same parameter, and then gonna
Mm.
choose which is the best one for me. Got that too. Um, that's and then I got what I got. And then I moved to um, it was inflator.
The
Uh,
Oxford, Sony Oxford
yeah.
thing.
Now I got to Taupe Studio, which is another plugin from Acoustic Audio, which is emulating a tape machine.
Okay.
But I'm still testing, so it's not already in the. It probably will be quite soon. And then I got
Okay.
Sooth too, but it's just like checking the high end and the low end. Is there if I got any tricky mix that where the high end and the low end they're not under control,
Hmm.
but 90% of the time is off.
Okay.
And after that, I'm moving to Clipper, and then after the Clipper, I move to a limiter, and then off. And then at the end, I go just like a plugin to check phase, loudness.
And that's all master bus. And how much of that takes care of what would traditionally been done individually on each channel? Like,
That
are you still? How much are you still using on certain channels? If like how much compression are you doing? How much EQ are you doing?
is really depend what I'm doing. If is the kind of thing I on every single channel, I always have an channel strip EQ. Sorry, channel strip can be SSL or Neve.
Okay.
It's really depend.
And if you're using one or the other, do you commit to like all SSL or all Neve, or do you
No,
mix and match?
I'm mixing my I know that I love like the Neve on guitar,
Hmm.
and I always got the Neve on guitar
Okay.
because that kind of mid range I got from that Neve channel strip is to me is unique. Or even for the brass section,
Mm.
that Neve console, that emulation of Neve console is great.
Obviously, you've got access to like a lot of SSL desks. How often are you, if ever, are you bringing everything out, doing faders, EQ, compression on like the duality, and then printing an analog mix, or do you tend to strictly stick to in the box stuff?
I tend to do 80% of the things in the box,
Yeah.
all of the automation in the box, and then when the client approves the mix, I go to the studio and print as an analog sum.
Okay.
So nowadays, I actually just change a little bit. I'm trying to mix straight in the analog using it as a sum because it changes the sounds a little bit.
What
Um,
do you think you gain from doing the analog sum through a desk?
I don't know. I got the feeling that the sound is get more, you got more depth.
Okay.
It's got the separation is get so easy, and then I don't know. You got more. It's more easy to mix. If you bring something, the bass, you bring it up, it start to become louder, but the separation is still there
Do you have all faders at
at
zero
zero. Yeah,
and then just pans?
yeah. I mean, because I like the Michael Brower approach, so I got four, 5 different sub buses. What I'm doing is sending all of my stems to the desk, and then all of the stems come back in 5 different buses in Pro Tools.
Okay.
And then back in Pro Tools, I got these 5 different buses, sum it there,
And what have you got processing wise on those 5 different buses?
So this is stealing. He shared his video, so what I'm using. I got on one the base A bus A. I got um 33906, the Neve compressor,
Hmm.
and then underneath the Pultec.
Hmm.
That is the main kind of like bus where I got all of the lead instrument. On B, which is this is bus A. On bus B, I got the stressor and the Ilius channel strip.
Okay.
Just
So that's just a plug-in distressor.
yeah. Um, and then on C, I got the barium compressor from Malay, and
Nice.
then a stereo spread, which is like got the spread a little bit 120. So, and then it's only for guitar, electric guitar, to get a little more wide width. And then on D, everything that can be super wide. So I got a shadow wheel and then stereo width 130. And
Okay.
then the last one is voice, nothing.
Okay.
Sometimes when they ask me to get really, really loud, uh, after all of this plugin on every single every single bus, I got a clipper just boosting a couple of dBs and
Hmm.
catching the peak, and then move it.
What
But
are you using for clipping?
um, Ash by Acoustic Audio is the
Okay.
emulation of the Lowry Gold Lowry, which is basically super
Mhm.
linear clipper.
Cool. So not much processing individually, and a lot of like master bus processing.
Yeah, but obviously it's depend. But this is the kind of approach where I don't want to touch too much while recording. I
Hmm.
prefer to do a lot of automation rather than doing a lot of EQing
Hmm.
or compressing. Obviously, if something is not well recorded, that obviously need a. That's the thing where if you got bad balance, you can compress it as much as you want, but
Hmm.
probably the automation will be the best and more
Yeah.
natural thing.
Hmm. Yeah, particularly for vocals, I like to make edits and then just use like the gain on Pro Tools just
Yeah,
to like level it out before you start. Because you want the if you're using compression for like coloration, you want it to affect all the signal. You don't want it to be like 60 dBs for this section and then like no dBs for like
yeah.
another section. You want it to like, you know, contour the sound evenly across the performance, I find anyway. So yeah, I will typically like even like certain words, oh, that word could just be like a smidge louder, and get it sitting nice just using the gain of the DAW first.
I spend ages doing this, and then I do the automation, the fader. And what I usually do actually in live, where I obviously can't do these kind of things,
Hmm.
I on the lead vocal I got two channels, which is I got the channel of the vocal, and then I got a bass
Hmm.
where my vocal go into that bass. So the my main vocal is not going to the left and the main
Hmm.
is going to this bass, and this bass is going to the left and right. And then having these two fader, and I got normal compression on the first voice
Yeah.
on the channel, which is catching the peak, and then on the second channel, which is the bass, which is what is going to the main, I got another compressor. So with these two fader next to each other, I can balance the voice and
Mm.
I can decide how much compressor
Yeah.
is gonna work on the second one. So if I want to get the voice sitting in the mix, I'm gonna boost the channel, so the compressor on the bass is gonna work
Work
quite
harder.
hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I can decide the volume.
So the first channel is got like just an inline compressor that's just static. You're not touching that. That's just caching the peaks for
Yeah,
like security. And then you're riding into like a more aggressive compressor.
compression,
That's
and
really
then
cool.
I can choose how much compressor I want it, and then if they move to a ballad, I can turn it down so less compression, and then I can ride the volume of the voice.
So you pull the first fader down so it's not
And
hitting the slamming the second compressor, and then just push that
yeah,
output of that compressor up more.
exactly. And in this way, you got two EQ,
Hmm.
because you got the main EQ on the channel, and then you got another EQ on the buses. So even if you got an S too loud, you can take it down from there. And the cool thing is, even if you're doing front of house and monitoring from the same desk, the bus is not going to the wedge monitor. So
Mhm.
if you're gonna change an EQ, it's not gonna affect the singer on
Mhm.
stage. So if you want to compress way more, it's fine, but the singer still got the dynamic on the voice.
Yeah, so
So
the first channel is just the one that's going out to
yeah,
the aux.
ideally you got a monitor engineer, so
Yeah.
you don't have to deal with this. But
Yeah,
that's a dream.
yeah. We've covered quite a lot. Weirdest piece of gear or weirdest thing you've come across in a session, either live or weirdest instrument you've recorded?
Uh, no idea. Um, Weirdest instrument I recorded.
Or weirdest bit of gear you've used or something out of the ordinary? I've had a sitar on stage and the feedback was an absolute nightmare. Couldn't get any level out of it, and like it's 57 or something. And the other thing is that like it resonates. So he'll be playing it, and then like there'd be like a drone string, and it's like, is that feedback or is that like one of the strings? And so you're like there trying to like looking at the graphic equalizer.
I was
You've got like really narrow notches to try and stop it from feeding back, and you're like killing notes out of this. Like, no, he needs that one. He needs that frequency.
yeah, that sometimes happen when you got an instrument that is got feedback and then you don't know where it's catching
Hmm.
because or might be like the singer is like so quiet that it's not you don't know what you want to cut it because if you cut it, it's something that they need. But
Hmm.
uh, I don't know. I usually have like um, um, N n no, but I got a story from a friend of mine. They're probably the weirdest things I have heard in my life. So there was this artistic installation in Italy, and they asked him to put headset on 5 pigeon, just to give you
Mic headsets or
m-
like headphones.
mic headset.
So the pigeon has got like a little
So yeah,
like a little lavalier
yeah,
mic.
yeah, and he said like it's not possible. So he had to mic as a room mic for pigeons.
No, I like the idea of gluing a mic onto a pigeon. You want to come over the top, I think. Get it in the
Yeah,
hairline,
probably. Yeah,
on the beak.
yeah.
Bit of super
That was
glue.
that was probably the weirdest thing I ever heard.
Hmm. Yeah, but you'd have to have wireless packs because they're gonna fly
Yeah,
around.
yeah, of course. A
Like a
really
little
nice.
belt pack.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
the.
probably the funny thing will be like put on rather than
Hmm.
listen what they're
Yeah,
doing.
you want to get cheap enough ones that you don't need to retrieve them. You just send it out into the world and leave them
Yeah,
there. If you had 50 of those, and then you're mixing it and they're all flying around, that would be quite a nice little like immersive experience. Doing like
yeah. I
an
don't think I want to listen it.
ambisonic like surround sound system,
Yeah,
and you're listening to the sound of like 50 pigeons all mic'd up.
yeah, yeah. I feel it's the kind of thing that ideally could. Yeah, I don't know.
It'd be like one of these like electroacoustic composition pieces where you have to like close your eyes and like imagine you're a pigeon. You're,
Yeah,
you're in the
probably.
flock with them.
Yeah,
Oh, it could
probably.
be like one of these 4D experiences. You could have like a fan, the chairs could move, and you could be like flocking with the pigeons. You're in there with them.
Yeah, I think I would like to see the face of my friend, which is someone. It's not rude, but it's someone quite straight. And seeing someone, can you put like a microphone or a pigeon? I would
Mm.
like to see his face. Like, no.
You always give the customer what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They want a mic on a pigeon.
You have to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, um, so we've been chatting for quite a while.
Yeah.
Best band you've ever worked with,
Uh,
or potentially a band that you would really like to work with, like dream band.
that's quite interesting because probably my favorite band ever was Led Zeppelin.
Mm,
Um, but band that probably would like to work is Mumford and Sons
mm,
because I like to get different type of instrument recorded and it's kind of like you got the vibe of pop music, but at the same time you got acoustic instrument to record, which is kind of the great balance, which is what I like to do is recording like acoustic instrument rather than
yeah.
something very um
electronic.
yeah, electronic. But this is just two names that just Becca Stevens and other artists that I love it. And but I feel like so lucky. I'm working with a lot of great musicians at the moment, and I can't complain
Yeah.
about anything. And every session we go together is like I feel like so lucky that I'm working with them. So I'm
Are you doing most of your work out of the RBC?
yeah, but I'm doing also like freelance stuff. So sometimes I'm going to Wales to record in a studio over there. They're a nice studio over there. So or working by myself as a mixing engineer.
Hmm.
So it's kind of good blend between everything.
Yeah, that's cool. Guess that's everything. Unless
Amazing. It
you want
was
to talk about
nice.
anything else?
I think we
Yeah,
cover
yeah.
even
Talked quite a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it was great.
Right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Cheers.
See you.
Stop this.